911, what's your emergency?
She's not moving. There's blood in the pool. Oh my God, the whale has her. The trainer's, she's gone.
What happened that summer afternoon at Blusia Sanctuary would shock the world. It wasn't just the death of a beloved trainer. It was the unraveling of a carefully crafted illusion, the idea that humans could tame the wildest predator of the sea. Her name was Elise Moreau. To thousands of visitors, she was a performer, a dancer of the deep, a woman whose every gesture seemed to bridge the impossible distance between human and beast. But to those who knew her story, Elise was more than that. She was a dreamer, a child from the wind-battered coast of Brittany, France, who once pressed her face against the salt-sprayed rocks and imagined swimming beside the giants of the ocean. While other children collected dolls, Elise collected seashells and sketches of whales. By 19, she had left her family behind to enroll in a marine mammal training program in the United States. Her first years were hard scrubbing algae from tanks, hauling buckets of thawed fish, watching senior trainers perform the routines she longed to master. But her persistence made her stand out. Elise didn't just follow commands, she seemed to feel the rhythm of the animals, anticipating their moods with uncanny precision. By 34, Elise had risen to the top of her profession. She became lead trainer at Blusia Sanctuary, an oceanfront marine park carved into the cliffs of Santa Cruz, California. She was adored not only by her peers, but by the public. Fans lined up to see her signature performance, harmony of the deeper fluid ballet between woman and orca. Children wore t-shirts with her name. Tourists begged for her autograph, but at the heart of her fame was a single creature, Kaela, a massive female orca, black and white skin gleaming under the stadium lights. A predator weighing over 6,000 pounds. To the crowd, she was majestic, gentle, even affectionate. To Elise, she was a partner, almost a sister. "She listens to my heart," Elise once said in an interview, resting her hand on the orca's slick back. "She doesn't need commands. We just understand each other." It was the story the park wanted the world to believe. Trust, connection, harmony. But behind that carefully polished image lay darker truths. Kaela had not been born in captivity. She had been ripped from her family pod in the icy waters of Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula in 1995. She was just a juvenile when boats closed in, nets tightened, and her pod scattered. She was sedated, shipped across oceans, and thrust into a life measured not in miles of ocean but in concrete walls. From the beginning, her record was troubling. Trainers described her as intelligent, yes but moody, unpredictable. She refused food. She lashed out. One early incident left a trainer with broken ribs after a sudden strike of her powerful tail. The reports were filed quietly, dismissed as anomalies, tucked away where the public would never see them, but the signs never disappeared. Years later, when Blusia Sanctuary acquired her, executives described her as a high-value performer, a star in the making. To visitors, she was rebranded as a gentle giant, and under Elise's care it seemed to be true. For nearly a decade, the pair dazzled audiences with flawless routines. Every leap, every synchronized twist, every delicate nudge of Kaela's nose beneath Elise's foot painted the picture of perfect harmony. Yet whispers circulated behind closed doors. Minor refusals, long stares. A delay in a spin, subtle signs of stress, classic signals trainers recognized as frustration, agitation, even danger. Some noticed Kaela popping her jaws aggressively after shows. Others reported her isolating herself, lingering at the far edges of the pool, unresponsive. When one junior trainer approached Elise with concern, she waved it off with a smile. "She's just moody today." To Elise, these moments weren't warnings. They were quirks, part of Kaela's complexity, proof of her intelligence, not her volatility. But to others, unease began to grow. Because no matter how much love Elise gave, no matter how deeply she believed in their bond, Kaela was still a killer whaler predator whose instincts could never be erased. On June 12th, before hundreds of unsuspecting spectators, those warnings would become reality. A celebration of trust would transform into horror, and Elise's final moments would expose a truth no marine park could ever hide. This is the story of Elise, Moreau, and Kaela. A story of love, illusion, and betrayal, and of how harmony can shatter in an instant, when nature reminds us it can never be tamed. June 12th began like any other performance day at Blusia Sanctuary. The coastal sun was merciless, burning down on the cliffs of Santa Cruz until the air shimmered with heat. The bleachers filled quickly, families with strollers, retirees clutching cameras, children buzzing with anticipation. Vendors sold popcorn and lemonade at the gates. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, an anniversary show marking 10 years of Elise and Kaela performing together. Behind the curtain of polished smiles, Elise prepared quietly in the trainer's lounge. She zipped her wetsuit, checked her headset, and tied back her dark hair. For her, this show meant more than any before. A decade of partnership, trust, and discipline distilled into one performance. She told a colleague earlier that morning, "This one has to be perfect. For Kaela, for us." But even in the hours leading up to the performance, signs of unease surfaced. In the holding pool, Kaela swam in tight, restless circles, Trainers noted she refused her morning meal, a 5-gallon bucket of herring and salmon that she would normally devour. Instead, she let the fish sink, uninterested. One handler logged it as a minor refusal, nothing alarming. But seasoned trainers knew, when an orca doesn't eat, something is wrong. The audience filed in, fanning themselves in the heat. A speaker announced the start of Harmony of the Deep. Music swelled, soft and theatrical. The gates at the far end of the tank opened, and Kaela slid into the main pool. Her dorsal fin sliced the water like a blade. The crowd erupted in applause. Elise stepped onto the platform. Her presence was calm, poised, every movement rehearsed. She blew her whistle, raised her hand in a smooth cue. The show had begun. At first, everything seemed normal. Kaela circled the pool, lifted her massive frame into the air in a thunderous breach, and returned with a perfect splash. Water rained down on the front rows, sending children into delighted squeals. Elise smiled, bowing slightly, acknowledging the crowd. But to the trained eye, something was off. When Elise gave the signal for a tail wave, Kaela hesitated. Just a beat too long. The massive fluke lifted sluggishly, a half-hearted sweep. Elise covered it with her usual grace, calling out cheerfully. She sang hello, but behind her eyes flickered the briefest uncertainty. A few minutes later, Elise gave the cue for a synchronized spin. Kaela complied, but late, rotating only halfway before dropping back beneath the surface. Again, Elise smiled, masking the falter. "She's being playful today," she announced, voice amplified through the speakers. The crowd laughed, entertained, unaware of the tension tightening among the staff on the deck. In the trainer booth, a radio crackled. "Behavioral refusal, logging it," a junior trainer whispered, his tone hushed, uneasy. "Proceed, keep the show moving," came the clipped reply from management. The performance built toward its finale. This was Elise's signature act. The climax of Harmony of the Deep, Kaela rising from the depths, lifting Elise high above the surface on her rostrum, balancing her trainer like a living pedestal for all to see. It was dangerous, intimate, breathtaking, a maneuver that required absolute trust. Elise waded into the pool, water lapping at her shoulders. She extended her arms, signaling Kaela with a soft whistle and a clear vocal cue, "Up girl, let's go." But Kaela didn't move. She floated in place, her enormous body still, only her pectoral fins twitching slightly. The silence stretched. Elise repeated the cue, adding her voice again, softer this time. "Come on, Kaela." The crowd grew restless. A child shouted, "Do it, whale." Laughter rippled through the stands. Elise smiled tightly, masking the tension building in her chest. She glanced toward the other trainers on deck. One gave a subtle shrug, as if to say, "Keep going." Finally, Kaela moved, but not toward position. Instead, the orca veered sideways, brushing against Elise's legs with a cold, heavy glide. The contact was deliberate, almost testing. Elise gave a small, nervous laugh. "She's feeling playful," she said into the mic, her voice wavering just slightly. The audience chuckled, believing it part of the act, but the trainers on the sidelines shifted uneasily. Kaela had ignored the cue twice. She was improvising, and with a 6-ton predator, improvisation was never safe. Elise steadied herself, exhaled, and raised her hand once more. "Up girl, let's finish this." Kaela sank beneath the surface. The water shimmered as her massive shape disappeared into the depths. The audience leaned forward, expecting the triumphant finale, but under the surface something was different. Kaela wasn't positioning herself beneath Elise. She was circling slow and deliberate. The water above rippled faintly, betraying the movement of the predator below. Elise's eyes followed the faint shadow as it passed under her. She raised her hand again, repeating the cue. More insistent now. Silence. The crowd grew quiet, sensing the tension but not understanding it. Somewhere on the trainer's radio, a voice muttered, "Something's wrong." Then, without warning, the shadow surged upward. The water exploded. Kaela burst upward with a force that shook the pool, her massive head striking Elise squarely. The trainer lost her balance, arms flailing, before plunging into the water with a splash. For a split second, the audience thought it was part of the show, a playful tumble, a slip choreographed for drama. But then they saw Elise resurface, her eyes wide, her mouth opening in a scream that never fully escaped, because Kaela had her. The orca's jaws clamped down on Elise's arm with terrifying precision. Blood bloomed in the water, thin at first, then thick, clouding red around them. The muffled sound of her scream rippled through the surface, bubbles rising, frantic and broken. On deck, trainers froze, stunned. This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't in the script. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then chaos. "She's got her, she's got her." A voice shrieked over the radio, panic breaking through static. The crowd gasped. Some screamed. A father pulled his child into his chest. A woman dropped her phone, letting it clatter down the bleachers. One child whispered, confused, "Is that part of the show?" It wasn't. Kaela dragged Elise under the surface. The trainer's legs kicked wildly, thrashing against the water. Her headset crackled with static as it flooded. For a moment, only bubbles and crimson swirls marked where she had been. Then the water broke and Kaela surged upward, thrashing her victim in her jaws like a ragdoll. Elise's body whipped violently side to side, her scream now reduced to a gargling cry. The sound that escaped her throat was raw, primal, desperate. Parents covered their children's eyes. Tourists screamed. The stadium, built for applause, now roared with horror. Elise managed to break free for a second. Her face surfaced white, panicked, blood streaming from her arm. She gasped, choked on salt water, and reached weakly toward the edge. Her lips formed a single word: help. But Kaela was already surging again. With one powerful lunge, the orca seized Elise by the leg and yanked her back under. The force was so violent, so sudden, that the crack of bone was audible even to the first rows. A trainer on deck screamed, "Deploy nets, now!" Emergency buoys hit the water. Whistles shrilled. Trainers slapped the surface, shouting Kaela's name. Nothing broke her focus. The water turned into a storm. Blood spiraled in dark clouds. The massive orca twisted, rolled, then rammed her victim upward. Elise's limp body shot through the surface, airborne for a split second, before slamming back down with a hollow slap. The crowd cried out. A mother fainted in the bleachers. Security scrambled. Radios buzzing. Lock down the stadium, get medical on standby. But every second mattered, and every second was slipping away. Elise surfaced again, sputtering, her chest heaving. She tried to scream, but it came out broken, a wet rasp. Then Kaela struck once more. Her rostrum slammed into Elise's chest with crushing force. The sound was sickening, like a branch snapping underfoot. Elise's cry cut off mid-breath. Her body went limp. Trainers screamed her name, voices cracking. Elise, Elise, release, release. But Kaela didn't let go. She circled the pool, dragging the trainer's body with her, her black and white mask gliding through the red-stained water. The music that had accompanied the performance, cheerful theatrical, cut suddenly, leaving only the sound of screams and the churn of water. On the far end of the pool, emergency nets snagged on the railing, refusing to deploy. One trainer fumbled with the underwater acoustic system, blasting piercing high-frequency tones meant to deter aggression. The sound echoed through the stadium, sharp and shrill. It only agitated Kaela further. She thrashed, water spraying into the stands. Spectators in the front row were drenched in a mix of seawater and blood. Panic rippled through the crowd as ushers screamed for evacuation. 2 minutes, that's all it took. When Kaela finally released her, Elise floated face up near the edge of the tank. Her wetsuit was torn, her arm bent at an unnatural angle. Her chest didn't rise, blood slicked her hair across her pale face. Trainers pulled her from the water. CPR began instantly. Chest compressions, breaths, frantic hands pressing against her sternum. "Stay with us, Elise, stay with us." But there was no response. The stadium, once filled with cheers, was silent now. Silent except for sobs, radios crackling, and the desperate, rhythmic thud of compressions against a body that would not wake. By the time paramedics arrived, Elise Moreau was gone, pronounced dead at the scene, and Kaela the Orca, who had been celebrated as a partner, a friend, a sister, drifted in the center of the tank, calm and still, watching, not with rage, not with triumph, but with something colder, something no trainer, no park, no spectator could ever explain. The illusion of harmony had shattered. The ocean's predator had reminded the world who she truly was. When the stadium emptied, it was quiet enough to hear the lap of water against concrete. Where hundreds had screamed minutes before, only staff remained shaken, pale, some sobbing openly. Paramedics carried Elise's body away beneath a white sheet. Trainers huddled in disbelief. Security guards stood frozen, their radios still hissing with unanswered calls. Inside the pool, Kaela swam slowly in circles. No whistles, no cues, no cheers. She surfaced only to breathe, then slipped beneath the blood-clouded water again. To some, she was a monster. To others, she was something else, a wild creature, pushed too far, for too long. Within hours, the news broke. World-renowned trainer killed by captive orca. Footage shot by tourists spread online before the park could suppress its screams echoing in the background. The surface of the water stained red, the limp body of Elise hauled onto the platform. Networks replayed it in an endless loop. The story was everywhere. By morning, Bluesia's sanctuary was closed, gates chained. News vans lined the entrance. Satellite dishes pointed at the sky. Reporters demanded answers. Protesters gathered outside with hastily made signs. "Free Kaela, captivity kills. Justice for Elise." The investigation began immediately. Teams from OSHA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and independent marine biologists descended on the park. What they found was damning. Internal documents revealed years of warning signs, reports of food refusals, records of Kaela lunging at trainers during feeding, incidents of unexplained agitation, documented but buried. One memo, dated 2 years before the tragedy, described Kaela as high-risk in water interaction. Another email between executives dismissed concerns bluntly, too valuable to sideline. "Elise can handle her, she's the only one who can." Whistleblowers came forward. Former trainers admitted they had raised alarms. "We all saw it." One said in a televised interview she was unraveling. But Elise believed, she trusted too deeply. And management let it happen. The coroner's report was released 2 weeks later. Cause of death: drowning, massive blunt force trauma, multiple lacerations consistent with orca bites. Elise's parents read it aloud at a press conference, their voices breaking. Her father held up her shredded wetsuit for cameras to see. Her mother whispered through tears. She loved Kaela, she trusted the system, and the system killed her. Public outrage surged. Petitions gathered millions of signatures in days, demanding an end to orca captivity. Vigils were held outside the sanctuary gates. Flowers, handwritten letters, photographs, and candles piled against the iron bars. One note read, "She gave her heart to the ocean, and the industry drowned her." Lawmakers in California responded. The Orca Protection Act was drafted, seeking to ban the breeding, sale, and performance of captive orcas. Elise's parents testified at a public hearing, holding her wetsuit in their hands. They told the world they didn't want vengeance, they wanted change. Meanwhile, inside the sanctuary, Kaela remained alone. No trainers entered her pool again. No shows, no whistles, no music. She circled the tank endlessly, surfacing in silence. Staff described her as restless, withdrawn. One janitor later recalled passing the tank late at night and seeing her floating motionless, staring into the empty seats where Elise once stood. Some called Kaela a killer, others called her a victim, but all agreed she was never meant to live in a concrete tank. No amount of choreography or applause could silence the truth. She was not a prop, she was a predator, and captivity had broken her. Elise Moreau's legacy stretched beyond a memorial plaque. Schools stopped booking trips to marine parks. Families canceled vacations. Celebrities spoke out. Animal welfare groups launched new campaigns with her name at the forefront. In the end, her story became more than tragedy. It became a reckoning, because Elise didn't die from lack of skill. She died because the warning signs were ignored. Because the system valued profit over safety, illusion over truth. She believed in harmony. But harmony cannot exist in a cage. The ocean is vast. Orcas are meant to roam thousands of miles, guided by family bonds older than civilization itself. To believe they can be tamed, confined, and turned into entertainment is to believe in a lie. Elise gave her life to that lie, and Kaela reminded the world, in the most brutal way possible, that nature cannot be scripted. So the question remains, how many more must die, human or animal, before we stop calling this entertainment?